value outside perspective. It took me a long time to learn this. And so I have in the notes there, different ideas don't impede us. They spark better solutions.
Yeah.
So great leaders get this. Instead of seeing different viewpoints as a roadblock or, kind of like, hey, stop. They see it as rocket fuel for smarter choices and fresh thinking. So it took me a long time, like say with a Sunday school set design, for example.
Yeah.
For many years, I did, I would say I still do a lot of it, but I did probably like 90% of it by myself.
Yeah.
Or maybe I'd have like my son Adrian when he was little, and so I did it by myself, and I'd come down and I didn't really have a lot of help. And then once in a while I'd get, a big gang of people to help with some stuff, and then I'd still complete a lot of it. And so in that, there's sometimes when people would have ideas that were like just totally outside of what I was thinking at all,
Yeah.
And it took me a long time to learn to value those ideas, because even though as a leader, it's not like, you have to stand for something, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can't just waffle, or whatever, like, oh yeah, okay, let's do that. You have to lead. But sometimes those ideas, even if it's, a quote unquote dumb idea, it gives you another idea. It sparks something in you,
Yeah. Doesn't have to be exactly what they're saying, but it, you can think about it and say, well, how can we somehow utilize a form of their idea?
Yes.
And then at that point, it encourages the other person who brought up the idea to maybe even try to come up with greater ideas themselves. They'll, hey, he used my idea.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And what else could I think of that maybe could help?
Because now they're motivated. Yeah. Inspired. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think, what was it? Habit 6 in the 7 habits is synergize. And it's talking about teamwork and working together. And one of the things that he talks about in that book is he talks about, nowadays this word diversity has it seems like a whole nother meaning.
It does.
And so I thought about that as one of the sub points, and I just I almost don't want to use it because it's been hijacked.
Yeah.
But diverse opinions, or having opposing opinions, I suppose, but having people that are different than you is actually a value. And often, and this is, like I said, I had a hard time as a leader getting over some of this, not in any kind of racial sense or anything even close to that. And that's what so often it's related to today. But when we see people that are different than us, they don't think like we do, or they're not cool like we're cool, whatever, whatever it is, like they don't like the same kind of stuff we like, like, if you're really into music and they don't even like music, or maybe you're in a certain genre of music and they really like a different kind, maybe they just really love rap music or something. And so
help us, Lord.
Yeah. And so it's easy for us to almost write somebody off. But if we can look at it instead of, if we have other opinions and other perspectives, then we will never get stuck in groupthink, where we're thinking so small, and that's kind of what leads to that outside of the box thinking, is having those other.
If everybody was like us, oh man.
Yeah.
Ooh. And having that diversity of opinion, of thought. There's things that someone might notice, like a problem with our ideas, that we don't think of, because a lot of times we're not going to be very critical with ourselves. Critical thinking is kind of hard to do with our own selves.
Yeah.
This will work. Yeah, this is going to be great. Well, let's see how we can, make this work. But when you get other thoughts and other opinions, especially from people they will be straightforward with you on, or they'll be honest, or they'll give you their own thoughts and opinions. That's where critical thinking really helps. Or their
absolutely.
opinion, and can build your own ideas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
sometimes it's scary to ask for that.
It is. Yeah.
It's hard to ask
It's uncomfortable.
because when you ask somebody that you know, like pastor, for example,
Mm-hmm.
that you know will give you straightforward, honest feedback, it can be scary because you're like, this is great, I did a great job here, and then to have somebody critique it and tell you what to fix, it can be intimidating. But yet, if you do that and you go through that pain and that process, it comes out so much better.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I think everybody probably struggles with that. When your idea, especially if it's something you feel like, man, this is amazing.
Yeah.
And then someone comes around and they have constructive criticism.
Yes.
There is a difference between destructive criticism and
Yes.
constructive. So you have to know your source of who this is coming from.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to just take all kind of criticism. But if it's constructive, it a lot of times it doesn't feel good. And so, like you said, you don't want to ask.
Yeah.
But when someone is giving their honest opinion, they're not trying to come at you. They're not telling you your idea is horrible.
Right.
They're trying to think, hey, how can we make this a little better?
Yeah.
What are the flaws that could happen that we can try to prevent from happening?
Exactly. Yeah. And when we ask for that, rather than be defensive, and it's human nature.
Yes.
But that's when we need to accept it. And like to your point, I think there's destructive criticism. Even sometimes somebody may not mean to be, but they might critique something and it's just an opinion. You understand what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it's not going to make it better or worse. It's just a different. And so the more that you do it, the more experience you get in asking for critique and criticism, then you're able to discern that. The less you do it, it's painful. But the more you do it, the more you get used to it, and you're able to weed out what is destructive criticism. Yeah. You're also able to weed out, like, okay, well, that's a fine idea, but it's just different. It's not going to make it better or worse. It's just a different, maybe a means and methods. Maybe it's a different way of doing something.
Absolutely.
And it's not faster or more quality. It's just how this person would do it because they're left-handed.
Absolutely.
Whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah, if you get that experience.
If I could throw one more point in before we jump to the next point, in regards to what we're talking about, this actually, I did chapel today at the school.
Oh, okay.
And a lot of this kind of ties in with what I was teaching. I was talking about fulfilling your potential. And something that gets dangerous is when we put a cap on our potential.
Oh, that's
Which,
good.
if you can apply this to your idea, to how you do something, sometimes we feel like we do it the most perfect it could ever be done. And we put a cap right there. And so anytime someone tries to say, hey, let's take that cap off, let's take it to a greater place, we're defensive. Like, hey, don't touch that.
Yeah, don't mess with that.
Don't mess. It's great where it's at right now. We're comfortable where it's at right now. But when you get out of your comfort zone and you allow that to be taken off and to accept the constructive criticism, then, man, I mean, you're gonna hit to greater. You have greater potential, and there's never a point where we can hit perfection,
right?
With ourselves or with what we do, and so.
Well, and I hate the phrase, and I know it has merit in some places, but I hate the phrase, "If it ain't broke, don't fix it."
Oh,
I don't like that. I'm sure it applies in some situations, but I'm like, no, this is we got to.
You'll have to eventually fix it.
So here's another thing, and we're spending a lot of time on this first point, but it's good because. Another thing is with kids, like in Sunday school, I have experienced. I'll tell a little incident is thinking of benches. Like we used to have wood benches, so now we have these, Lifetime or whatever, the plastic ones, or I don't know what they are, but anyway. We used to have these wood benches, and so I had thought about like painting them different colors and stuff.
We had carpet over
we had
them,
carpet to soften them up and stuff. But I had thought about painting them, and in my mind, I remember thinking like, let's paint them all black, or it might have been navy blue or something, but just they'll all match, they'll look cool. And I remember talking about it, and I can't remember who it was that I was talking to, but it was a kid in Sunday school, and it might have been one of my kids at the time. This is years ago, but I remember talking about that, and they were just like, "Yeah, black." And I stopped, and I was like, "Okay, wait." In my mind, and in an adult, it's like that looks nice and clean and great. Kids, they want like bright orange and yellow
colors,
and blue and colorful and stuff. So anyway, that was just kind of a little bit of a,
it's interesting,
seeing the other side. And so we as Sunday school teachers, I joke all the time about the crazy sets we build that I just get to be a kid, I'm just like, what would I want to, I want to do a slide.
Oh yeah.
So we get to do all that stuff. Okay. One more example on point one before we move on. A long time ago, we had split our youth group up. We've done this a few times, but we had split our youth group into three different separate youth groups.
Mm-hmm.
And so we did this thing, and it was kind of an experiment but we were doing a meeting. And so each of the different, youth leaders, were doing a meeting with their group and, trying to ask for feedback and ideas and everything. And I remember one of the young men came out of the meeting, and he told me, he's like, "Man, it went great. Nobody had any kind of complaints. They like how it's going and everything." And so I kind of told him in so many words, I said, "Well, then you just wasted your time."
True. Wow.
Because the whole point of the meeting was to gain critical feedback because we wanted to improve.
Yeah.
And so, because we decided we needed to have this meeting and everything because things were not on a macro level. Looking, taking a step back, looking at the big picture, we said, okay, things are not working like they should. So this is one of the things we're going to do is we're going to have a meeting and get feedback. Well, if we didn't get that, then it was a waste of time. And so I guess the main thing that I'm thinking about is we talked a lot about, and I wasn't thinking about this all the way, but we talked a lot about feedback and critical feedback. And so, again, it's human nature to be defensive, but if you're going to ask, and you should, ask for critical feedback, then open yourself up to take it.
Yeah. Because
otherwise, you wasted your time, and you made yourself hurt, and you made that person uncomfortable.
Yeah. And I think too, and I know we're on still the same point, but if you're the one being asked for critical thinking, be wise about how you do it, because your approach can totally make the difference.
Yes.
If you approach it with humility, like, hey, you know what? I think your idea, this is just an example, but I think you have a good idea here, but I have an idea, maybe something we can make it better.
Yes.
Versus like, oh, you have a terrible idea. They're never going to come back to you for feedback.
I remember like doing work days around the church and stuff, and I started working construction when I was very young. But I remember seeing the difference of people. A lot of times they would, here's this 15-year-old kid, and they didn't know I've been working for a year in construction, and they'd be like, treating me like an idiot. So I would I was a respectful kid, and so I just deal with it. But then there was, I remember Elder Glenn Burgess was one of these that, like, the one that definitely had the right, they had the right to tell me, hey, go do thus and such or whatever, or treat me, like I was a kid, because I was. But they would be like, hey, can I show you something? I'm trying to pull a nail or do something. Hey, can I show you something? And I learned that, and I use that all the time.
Yeah, I've noticed that.
Yeah, I was like, hey, can I show you something?
It really works.
Because it makes the person not feel like an idiot.
Absolutely.
And it's just, I think in that split second, it makes them think, oh, okay, this guy has experience, and he's going to show me something, versus making you feel dumb.
And they start to value what you just told them.
Yeah, exactly.
I know that from personal experience. When, even with you, like when we've worked on things.
Hey,
let's try this way, and that's what I've noticed, and I've appreciated about how you operate. It's like, hey, you know what,
Yeah,
that makes me feel horrible.
Yeah.